Chapter 1058 Capture. Fortunately, Zhang Yi had the ability of both time and space, and he predicted the opponent's prediction in advance and then quickly changed the direction of displacement. But just as he left, hundreds of black chains still flew out of the armor of the black-armored monster and rushed straight towards him in an instant.
What
made Zhang Yi feel most incredible was that he did not just attack Zhang Yi alone. Instead, he attacked Zhang Yi, Cartier's, and Xuanwu at the same time, and even the entire joint fleet. Is he treating all of us as prey? Zhang Yi blocked his body with the two-world knot. At this time, he was no longer using just two-dimensional gates. After being promoted to Epsilon, all his abilities have been greatly improved. Even the two-world knot is a spherical body constructed by 72 diamond-shaped dimensional gates, which has a more stable defense. The black chain instantly penetrated his space, and the strong tearing feeling almost suffocated Zhang Yi. Fortunately, this attack was not aimed at Zhang Yi, otherwise Zhang Yi would not be sure to block it. Cartier's and Xuanwu were also in a mess. They tried their best to resist the chain attack of the black-armored monster. On the Star Island, a terrifying force erupted. The super-primordial water of Cartier's exploded to the maximum, and the body of Xuanwu spun like a gyroscope, raising huge waves. There were more than a dozen ships on the joint force side, all of which were attacked indiscriminately. General Horn immediately ordered to fire at the black-armored monster in the air. But in a flash, several ships were still pierced by the black chain. The solid hull of the warship was like butter encountering a hot knife under the attack of the black chain, and had no resistance. The black-armored monster pulled slightly with his hand, and several huge warships were dragged out of the water from the sea like toys, and flew towards the direction of the Fog Valley abyss. Zhang Yi has realized that the other party is not a different level of aliens from them. He took advantage of the fact that the other party was not targeting him, opened tracing of all things to the maximum, and then decisively opened the 3,000-dimensional gates of all things, and fled at the speed of light. The black-armored monster found Zhang Yi, who had escaped. It was wearing a mask, and its expression could not be seen clearly, but through its strange movements, it seemed that it could feel its interest in Zhang Yi. Walla dash! Dozens of black chains instantly penetrated the void and chased Zhang Yi. However, at this distance, Zhang Yi, who had the ability to predict the future, wanted to escape, and he could not catch up. The black-armored monster was suspended above the abyss of the Fog Valley. He hesitated slightly, but did not choose to chase Zhang Yi. This action attracted Zhang Yi's attention. He could feel that this weird guy was very powerful, and his power exceeded anyone Zhang Yi had ever met. Perhaps only the owner of the ability of Hell Guillotine in Shengjing could be compared. However, he gave people a weird feeling. From beginning to end, he never left the location of the abyss of the Fog Valley, as if he was afraid of something, or something was restraining him from leaving. What on earth is this? Zhang Yi shuttled back and forth continuously, and quickly fled to the sea. He carefully kept a sufficient distance from both armies, because the scale of the two armies was large, which would more easily attract the attention of the black-armored monster. Xuanwu discovered Zhang Yi, who was fleeing, and quickly sent a message to Zhang Yi, "Chaos, come and help me." Zhang Yi just pretended not to hear. As the saying goes, a gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall, and a friend of the Tao dies rather than a poor Taoist, so you go and hold that weirdo. Zhang Yi fled into the distance without looking back. Xuanwu and Katie Les were so angry that they gnashed their teeth. They did not have such a powerful means of escape as Zhang Yi, so they could only choose to withstand the attack of the black-armored monster. Zhang Yi fled hundreds of miles in one breath, and then he was suspended in the air and looked back at Qingdao. The distance was too far, and he could no longer see the battle situation there, but he could still feel the terrifying energy fluctuations coming from there. Inhale, exhale, dash. Zhang Yi took a deep breath. Everything that had just happened was too exciting for him. Could it be that he is an alien who has obtained the source of God before me? If he is really an alien from Qingdao, and he has obtained the source of God in advance and promoted to Epsilon, it would not be surprising. However, it is not very likely. Because if you think about it carefully now, the strange armor shape of the black armored monster is completely different from the combat uniform shape of any known country. It is a strange and powerful beauty. I hope you can all survive. Zhang Yi thought of the familiar people in Jiangnan district and sighed in his heart. If those people died, it would be very troublesome to deal with new people in the future. But life is like this. There will always be old people leaving your world, and then new people will come. It's okay to get used to it. In fact, there is no feeling. Anyway, no one in this world will always accompany anyone, and he doesn't need it. Zhang Yi thought about it and finally did not leave. He was at this safe distance, waiting for the end of the battle over there. If possible, he doesn't mind going over to save a few survivors, provided that he himself is in an absolutely safe situation. During this period, Zhang Yi received many calls for help from Xuanwu, but he turned a deaf ear to them. The old turtle was so angry that he cursed, but Zhang Yi just picked his ears and didn't take it seriously. After more than 10 minutes, Zhang Yi felt the energy fluctuations over there slowly dissipated. He flew high into the sky and began to communicate with the satellite system of the Jiangnan region, requesting permission to observe the situation there. As the captain of the investigation team and a person with a higher level than the ordinary captain, he quickly got the permission approval. Through the satellite system, he can see the sea around Qingdao. At this time, not only the sea around Qingdao, but also the Qingdao that was shrouded by poisonous miasma at the beginning became clear. The entire Qingdao was beaten to a mess, and the dense poisonous miasma had long been blasted away by several Epsilon strongmen, and many cities were destroyed abruptly. From the satellite map, only a huge abyss was seen lying quietly in the southeast of the ruined Qingdao, like a demon's eye. Zhang Yi looked at the sea. The Colombian naval fleet had gone far away, but the number of warships was reduced by half. The remaining half should have been captured by the black armored monster. Why did he capture the warships? Zhang Yi did not quite understand the black armored monster's actions. But now he did not have time to think. Whether it was the source of God, the strange miasma of Qingdao, or the half-life elves and the black armored monster, they all revealed a mysterious color. I am afraid it will take a long time before we can get the answer to the whole thing. Chapter 1059 Blackmail. Xuanwu dragged his tired body out of the Qingdao Sea and headed back to the East China Sea region. His body was in a mess at this time. After the battle with the black armored monster, many of the equipment constructed by the East China Sea region in his body were damaged. Fortunately, there were not many casualties. Xuanwu's spirit body sat on the head of the main body, and he was still in fear at this time. The battle just now was too dangerous. If they hadn't discovered later that the black armored monster seemed unable to leave the abyss too far, it would still be unknown whether their two troops could leave. Xuanwu couldn't help but think of Zhang Yi who had escaped, and he was also angry. At this time, a stream of light flashed in the distance. Zhang Yi appeared above Xuanwu's head. "Oh, Xuanwu, are you okay? That's great. You don't know how worried I am about you," Zhang Yi said to Xuanwu with a worried look. Xuanwu looked at Zhang Yi, and his nose was almost crooked with anger. "Haha, thank you for your worry. Didn't you just run away quickly?" Xuanwu was seriously injured at this time, and even if he wanted to get angry with Zhang Yi, he didn't have the ability. After all, Zhang Yi is now an alien of the Epsilon level, and his defense is super strong. He is no longer as easily controlled by him as he was in the past. Zhang Yi spread his hands. "What are you talking about? I'm just a small character who has just been promoted. How can I be of any use on the battlefield? I still have to rely on you and the Lord of the Sea. By the way, is that guy dead?" Xuanwu took a deep breath and tried to control his urge to swear. "He's not dead. That guy's ability to escape is also first class, especially on the sea." Zhang Yi couldn't help but sigh. "That's a pity." Xuanwu continued. "However, although that guy escaped, he was also seriously injured. According to his personality, he must have found a safe place to heal now." Zhang Yi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he heard it. "Oh, you mean he's not with the Colombian Navy fleet now?" Xuanwu's brows suddenly raised. He felt that Zhang Yi had some special ideas. "What do you want to do?" Chaos. Although we are hostile to Colombian Ocean Fleet, it is not a good choice to sneak attack their fleet at this time. There are no eternal enemies and friends, only eternal interests. If Zhang Yi sneak attacks their fleet while Cartier's is away, then if the other party retaliates, they will also attack their main camp. This is why the world recognizes that the aliens at the Epsilon level are humanoid nuclear weapons. It is because after reaching this level, it is difficult to restrain each other. If one side is impulsive and sends out the Epsilon level aliens, the biggest possibility is that both will perish. This is also the reason why the East China Sea region and Colombian Ocean Fleet have been confronting for a long time, but no large-scale war has ever broken out. Zhang Yi raised his mouth slightly. "Don't worry, I know how to do things." After he finished speaking, he instantly crossed the space and chased in the direction of the Colombian Navy. At this time, General Horn could not care about anything else and only cared about taking the fleet back to the naval base as soon as possible. In his mind, the Qingdao area has become a restricted area. Half of their fleet was forcibly abducted by the mysterious black-armored weirdo. Now that Cartier's has also escaped with serious injuries, there is no benefit for them to stay. Quick, increase the horsepower, full speed. Get out of this terrible place, General Horn ordered. Lieutenant. Colonel Critty turned his head and looked at General Horn with a strange look. Seeing Critty's strange face, General Horn immediately said angrily, "Do you have donkey hair in your ears? I told you to go and do something quickly. Why are you looking at me here?" At this time, another head appeared next to Critty's head. Zhang Yi smiled and waved at him. "Hello, nice to meet you." The entire command center was silent, and no one dared to breathe heavily. Including some Delta-level aliens with relatively strong strength, they also lowered their heads and pretended not to see the man who suddenly appeared in the conference room. General Horn swallowed hard. He turned his head and whispered to his men, "Where did that guy Catalyze go?" The officer under his command whispered. He went back to heal his wounds in advance. Catalyze was frightened by the black-armored monster this time. If that man didn't want to leave the area of the Fog Valley Abyss, Catalyze would probably be beaten to pieces. General Horn was immediately angry when he heard this. "That's too much. Look at you guys. Why are you standing here stupidly when there are guests? Go and pour tea." General Horn turned his head and looked at Zhang Yi with a smile on his face. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Chaos. I really made you laugh. These guys don't know the rules at all." Zhang Yi walked up to Horn with a smile. He didn't say a word, just stared at Horn. This made General Horn's hair stand on end. At this time and place, if Zhang Yi wanted to kill him, no one could stop him. Stop. This is the Noble Space plus Time System Epsilon-class alien. The only strong ships and powerful guns they can rely on are completely useless in front of the other party. What else can they do except bow their heads obediently? I think we can talk. In fact, there are many people like me in the Navy, and there is no value in killing me. General Horn glanced at the aliens around him, but they all pretended to be deaf and dumb and dared not say a word. They knew better than anyone how strong Epsilon was, and there was no reason to go over to block Horn's knife. Zhang Yi laughed hee-hee, and Horn's legs trembled in fear. This Imperial Navy general, when facing the threat of death, was not as mighty and unyielding as imagined. "Only, as long as you are willing to let me go, you can make any conditions." General Horn couldn't stand this pressure, and he collapsed and shouted. A sharp light burst out of Zhang Yi's eyes. "Is this what you said?" The purpose of his trip was not to kill Horn. There are no eternal enemies and friends, only eternal interests. Killing these guys would not bring him any benefits, but would only put him on Colombia's most wanted list, which was not worth it. In the end, Zhang Yi took advantage of the situation and got what he wanted. 2 newest warships. He promised Liu Karen that he would give her this new warship to build mechas. If he didn't take it now, he might not have such a good opportunity in the future. Although General Horn felt the pain, he still agreed to it in order to save his life. Chapter 1060. Settlement begins. Zhang Yi put the 2 warships into the alien space and then left. General Horn wiped the sweat from his forehead and slammed the table with a gloomy face. Damn chaos. If it weren't for saving everyone's lives, I really want to fight him. Everyone looked at General Horn with an ambiguous look. General Horn raised his voice and said excitedly, "It doesn't matter if I die, but there are so many people in the entire fleet, and they are the future of the Navy. I can't let you die in vain. So, for everyone, I would rather bear this humiliation." Lieutenant Colonel Crudy hurried over and said to General Horn with an excited face, "General, it's really hard for you. But don't worry, we all understand that you have no other choice at that time." General Horn was so excited that he drew his pistol. "What's the point of me being alive?" "General, no. You can't die." Crudy and the officer next to him rushed over to grab the gun. General Horn sighed, "Hey, if you do this, how can I face the commander when I go back?" Everyone comforted him. This mission is not considered a failure overall. Although we didn't get the source of God, didn't the East China Sea region also not get it? Moreover, no one expected that the black armored weirdo would suddenly appear. Yes, this is an accident. No one could have predicted it, General. You don't have to blame yourself. After everyone's persuasion, General Horn finally agreed to reconcile with him. As for the 2 warships taken away by Zhang Yi, they just need to blame the black armored weirdo and say that he sank them, and then let Zhang Yi pick them up. Anyway, Zhang Yi is a space-based alien, so it's not too difficult to understand that he can salvage warships. The Columbia Navy went to the naval base and didn't talk about it. Zhang Yi extorted money from the Columbia Navy and soon returned to find Xuanwu. But at this time, Xuanwu had long disappeared. Zhang Yi's mouth was almost crooked with laughter. It's obvious that Li Tianyang and Xuanwu knew that Zhang Yi would come back to settle accounts with them, so they deliberately dived and escaped. Zhang Yi was not in a hurry at all, because he still had the other party's handle in his hand. This time, he communicated directly with Li Tianyang. "Why are you running so fast? Qinglong is now seriously injured and in urgent need of treatment. Come back quickly to pick him up, otherwise he may die at any time." Zhang Yi's words were not a joke. Forcibly improving the realm is an unbearable injury for Qinglong. Although he was injected with drugs to prolong his life by Zhang Yi at this time, if he could not get treatment as soon as possible, he would definitely die. This time, Li Tianyang was really in a big headache. Qinglong has great strategic value for the East China Sea region. He is the second strongest person after Xuanwu. The mission has failed, and the East China Sea region has suffered heavy losses. If Qinglong has any problems again, Li Tianyang can directly commit suicide by drinking a bullet after returning, and he does not need to be tried in a military court at all. Zhang Yi, you are so cruel. You used Qinglong to threaten me. Remember this. The East China Sea region will not end this matter so easily, and you must give us an explanation. Li Tianyang thought for a moment with a gloomy face, and still felt that he could not sit idly by and watch Qinglong. He did not trust Zhang Yi, and it was impossible for him to hand Qinglong's life to Zhang Yi. "Xuanwu, let him send Qinglong over," Li Tianyang said to Xuanwu. At this time, Xuanwu was diving more than 1,000 meters underwater. After hearing Li Tianyang's words, he looked at him expressionlessly. "Are you sure?" Li Tianyang snorted coldly. "Of course. Qinglong's life is very valuable to the East China Sea region. He can't die now. And I am the commander-in-chief of this operation anyway. How dare he, Zhang Yi, do anything to me? What's more, they have all the people in the Jiangnan region in our hands." Li Tianyang showed a sneer on his face. He felt that Zhang Yi had a handle in his hand, so he couldn't turn the tables. Xuanwu nodded, "Okay." He began to float to the surface and sent his coordinates to Zhang Yi. It didn't take long for Zhang Yi to arrive at Xuanwu's location. Xuanwu opened his mouth wide, and Zhang Yi asked Huahua to get out of Jingwei's shadow. On its back was the seriously injured Qinglong. Zhang Yi walked into Xuanwu's mouth with a relaxed smile on his face. Xuanwu in this state had no way to deal with him, so Zhang Yi was not worried that Xuanwu would suddenly attack him. Li Tianyang came over with a team of guards. As soon as he saw Zhang Yi, Li Tianyang couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Ypsilon. Currently the world's top-level alien, with a terrifying combat power of breaking a city by himself. It would be a lie to say that Li Tianyang didn't feel weak in his heart. But when he thought that this was inside Xuanwu's body, and he controlled all the people in the Jiangnan area, this was the best handle, and Li Tianyang couldn't help but feel more confident. Chaos. You set up a big one for this incident. It's a trap. It almost got all of us involved. After I go back, I will ask you Jiangnan district to give us an explanation. Before he finished speaking, a slap suddenly appeared from the void next to him and slapped him hard on the face. Snap! Li Tianyang was caught off guard and was staggered. But he is also an alien, although just an ordinary beta-level enhanced alien, but his physical fitness is stronger than that of ordinary people. Seeing that Zhang Yi dared to slap him in the face in front of so many people, Li Tianyang was immediately angry. Zhang Yi, you dare to hit me? Ha! Zhang Yi didn't expect this old thing to be so tough, so he simply took out a gun. Everyone changed color immediately. Zhang Yi, this is going to be serious. Xuanwu's spirit also flew over. Chaos. Don't be impulsive. Zhang Yi glanced at him coldly. Why, you want to fight with me? Xuanwu. He took a deep look at Zhang Yi and then left silently. This was inside his body, and he was also seriously injured at this time.
What could he use to fight Zhang Yi?
A smart man does not need nonsense. He knows what choice he should make. Li Tianyang widened his eyes and shouted loudly, I am the chief of operations of the East China Sea region. Zhang Yi raised his hand and shot him in the knee of his left leg. Li Tianyang knelt on the ground with a plop. He struggled to stand up with his other leg, and Zhang Yi shot him in the knee of his right leg again. Ah! Li Tianyang collapsed to the ground in pain, wailing. Although he is an extraordinary person, he has never experienced training and fighting on weekdays. He just used drugs to support his body. Zhang Yi pointed a gun at his head and walked over step by step. Li Tianyang, the commander-in-chief of the operation, is incompetent and reckless in commanding the battlefield, resulting in the innocent deaths of many members of the operation team. And you suppress the aliens in the Alliance region, targeting the outstanding investigation team leader Chaos. You even watched him die without helping him, deliberately putting Chaos in a life-and-death crisis. Tell me, do you deserve to die? Chapter 1060. One Eye said yes. Li Tianyang's eyes turned red. He struggled to raise his head and stared at Zhang Yi. Nonsense. If you say so, then it is. Zhang Yi looked at his eyes arrogantly. Yes, if I say so, then it is. Li Tianyang was shaking with anger. He knew that it was useless to say anything now. In desperation, he decided to strike first, so he reached for the gun at his waist, and Zhang Yi did not stop him. When Li Tianyang pointed the gun at him, Zhang Yi took the lead and pulled the trigger. The bullet went straight through Li Tianyang's head and left a beautiful red mole on his forehead. The air was unusually quiet. The officers of the East China Sea region were pale. They didn't expect that their chief of operations, Zhang Yi, would really kill if he said so. Zhang Yi put away his gun and spread his hands to the people around him with an innocent look. You all saw it clearly. I didn't want to kill him.
He was the first to attack.
I was completely in self-defense. How dare the people around say a word? He dared to kill Li Tianyang, so he definitely wouldn't mind killing one more ignorant person. Xuanwu's spirit floated to Zhang Yi's side and said to him coldly, You've played a big game this time. Think about how to explain it to the two regions. Zhang Yi tilted his head and said to Xuanwu meaningfully, After you became an Epsilon alien, have you been so cautious in doing things? Xuanwu thought about it and suddenly laughed. Don't joke, from then on, whatever I do is right.
Ha ha.
Ha ha ha. The two suddenly laughed together. That's right, Zhang Yi is right now no matter what he does. He is already Epsilon. Huashu country needs his power, and Zhuzheng of Jiangnan region will not blame him for deliberately concealing it, but will double his efforts to please him. As for the East China Sea region, the anger over there can be wiped out as long as Jiangnan region pays enough. Because Jiangnan region has its own Epsilon, and the body lying on the ground, no one cares about it at this time. The Minister of Operations is a position, not a person. If Li Tianyang died, there would be Ma Tianyang and Niu Tianyang to take over his position. Xuanwu dived underwater, and Zhang Yi asked people to bring the people from Jiangnan district over. He couldn't follow Xuanwu back to Donghai district. After all, he had played Donghai district hard this time. If he really went there, he would inevitably have trouble again. Zhang Yi was too lazy to argue with them. He had thought about it, and after returning to Jiangnan district, he would leave this mess to Zhu Zheng to deal with. He was still thinking about how to explain to Zhu Zheng that he secretly took away the source of God and then let the people from Jiangnan district go there to die. Now, Zhu Zheng also sent Jingwei to lurk around him, which happened to be a perfect excuse. Anyway, now, there is no need to worry that Zhu Zheng will turn against him, but Zhu Zheng has to coax him more carefully. This is the law of survival in the end times. As long as you are strong enough, you will always be right. The people from Jiangnan district were gathered together, many of whom were injured, including Situ Xin, who fainted at this time. But the others still learned the fact that Zhang Yi had become an alien from Ypsilon. His eyes were full of envy and awe, but they were also angry when they thought of Zhang Yi playing tricks on them.
Zhang Yi didn't care about that.
When Xuanwu arrived at the border of Huashu country, Zhang Yi asked him to float up and then chose to take the people back by boat. Xuanwu couldn't turn against Zhang Yi at this time, so he naturally sent Zhang Yi and others out obediently. Zhang Yi opened the dimensional door, took out a giant icebreaker, and then commanded everyone to board the ship. Deng Xintong and others boarded the ship one after another, and then took all the wounded away. Well, goodbye, everyone. Zhang Yi said goodbye to Xuanwu and others with a smile. Among the four spirits, only Xuanwu was in good condition at this time. Both Qinglong and Zhu Ke were seriously injured and could not come to see him off. But if the two of them were really here, I'm afraid they would also grit their teeth at Zhang Yi. Xuanwu shrugged indifferently. In fact, it's better for us not to meet again. I don't think it's a good thing for two Ypsilons to meet. Zhang Yi nodded, and he thought of the black-armored monster in the huge abyss on Qingdao, and he was still frightened. You're right. Zhang Yi said goodbye to Xuanwu, and the big turtle swam towards the East China Sea region. Zhang Yi commanded the soldiers on the ship and drove the icebreaker towards Tianhai City. Go to Tianhai City first, and then take the Blizzard City special train back to Blizzard City. Everyone's attitude towards Zhang Yi became more respectful at this time. If they were still angry about Zhang Yi's laziness when they came here, at this time, most of them were in awe of Zhang Yi from the bottom of their hearts. Maybe some people would think that Zhang Yi used this trick to harm too many people in the two regions, including their comrades. But most people will only recognize Zhang Yi's strength. Because no matter what the strong do, it is right, and there is no need to these weak people explained. After the end of the world, most of those who have survived to this day understand this truth. However, Chapter 1060, Brother Bo Bing. Zhang Yi didn't care what others thought about this issue. When he decided to obtain the source of God alone and set a trap to lure the East China Sea region and the Columbia fleet into the game, he knew that this would be the result. Anyway, he had already got everything he wanted. He found Jingwei and asked Jingwei to hand over Huahua and Lele to him. Jingwei immediately released Huahua and Lele from the shadow space. The captured big chinchilla was now anesthetized, sticking out its tongue, and lying on Lele's back in a daze, looking very funny. Zhang Yi didn't say much and called Huahua and Lele to leave. Jingwei looked at Zhang Yi from behind and suddenly shouted, "Zhang Yi." Zhang Yi turned around. How many times have I told you that you should use code names when you are working? Code name Zhang. Zhang Yi.
That.
Jingwei hesitated for a moment, lowered her head, and said, "It's not working time now." "Oh, that's true. What do you want to talk to me about?" Zhang Yi looked at her calmly and asked. Jingwei quietly clenched her fists and then mustered up the courage to say to Zhang Yi, Can I follow you?" Zhang Yi's eyes revealed a look of surprise. "You want to follow me? What a joke. Aren't you Zhu Zheng's mans?" Jingwei explained, "I'm just a test subject. And the meaning of my existence is just to help Zhu Yu become perfect. My ability needs to rely on others to exist. For me, you are my best choice." Zhang Yi's face showed a look of enlightenment. If Zhu Yu is a copy of Yuan Kongya, then her ability is likely to be the same as Yuan Kongya. The reason why Jingwei can quickly become a captain-level alien is because of the use of Bingpa. During the time she was in contact with Zhang Yi, she slowly learned the truth about Bingpa.
She
Also understood that sooner or later she would be sacrificed for Zhu Yu's perfection. So she wanted to find a way out for herself. Zhang Yi suddenly smiled. But why should I accept you? Your strength is nothing to me. I have the same ability as you, and it's better than yours. Most importantly, I can't confirm whether you are loyal enough. That's the most critical thing for me. Jingwei opened her mouth and finally said her only advantage. My shadow can contain living things. Zhang Yi thought for a while, then he smiled. He didn't give Jingwei any answer, just turned and left lightly. The conditions proposed by Jingwei were not enough for him to accept this woman. Jingwei looked at Zhang Yi, who was leaving with a sense of loss. After a while, one after another aliens in black combat uniforms walked out of the shadows behind her. They were all members of the Night Crow squad, but they were different from Jingwei. They were not transplanted with Yuankong Night cells. Instead, they were transplanted with Jingwei cells. Therefore, these people have the ability of shadows. However, as transplanted bodies, they cannot have all the characteristics of the ability. They can only be regarded as degraded Jingwei. But as shadows, it is completely enough to attach to every captain-level alien in action and monitor their actions. Captain, we should report the situation here to the commander, a Night Crow said in a cold tone. Jingwei raised her head and restored her usual indifferent expression. She put her right fist on her chest and said, Now, gather all the information. Jiangnan District, Blizzard City. Zhu Zheng finished reading the intelligence transmitted by the Night Crow squad, sat on the chair, and fell into a long silence. Beside him, a little guy who was only more than 1 meter tall stood behind the chair, holding a pink rabbit doll in his arms, looking up at him with an innocent face. Zhu Zheng slowly lowered his head, glanced at the cute little girl, and suddenly sighed deeply. He touched Zhu Yu's smooth hair, slowly stood up, and came to the windowsill. Today in Blizzard City, the snow is still heavy, and the roofs of every house are covered with snow. The cold wind is howling, and this snow seems to never stop, freezing the entire land. I've been walking on thin ice all my life. Do you think I can make it to the other side? Zhu Yu had no idea what Zhu Zheng meant by this, and he tilted his head curiously, blinking his cute big eyes. Lan Xinqing looked at Zhu Zheng from the side, opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Because the intelligence they received today was too incredible. Coupled with some recent events, Zhu Zheng's calculations were wrong one after another, and he looked several years older. I calculated everything, but I still miscalculated Zhang Yi. He is more powerful than I thought, which should be a good thing. But when he comes back, he will definitely call me to task. Well, I have to be prepared for how to deal with him. Zhu Zheng raised his right hand, thought for a while, and said to Lan Xinqing, "Elo, the supplies in the warehouse are ready. Leave what we need and prepare the rest for Zhang Yi. He is Ypsilon now, and he also has..." Chapter 1063 Abnormal Awakener. Zhang Yi's ship arrived at Tianhai City and landed at Chaoyu Port. This trip was not long, and Tianhai City was still the same. Chen Jingguan brought people to greet Zhang Yi and his friends. Zhang Yi said to Chen Jingguan, "Arrange a car to take them to Xiamayashan subway station." Chen Jingguan was stunned for a moment, then nodded and asked someone to arrange a car to take them away. He originally thought that these were all big shots in the Jiangnan region, and Zhang Yi had to entertain them no matter what he said. Unexpectedly, they were just passing by. Deng Shintong came over and asked Zhang Yi, "Aren't you going back with us?" Zhang Yi heard this and smiled contemptuously. "If I go back now, I'm afraid many people will not be able to sleep, right? Forget it, you go back and explain the situation here to the higher-ups first. I will go there naturally after a while." Even if Zhu Zheng didn't call him, Zhang Yi would go. Zhang Yi still had to talk to old Zhu about sending Jingwei to secretly monitor him. Deng Shintong nodded thoughtfully. He reached out and patted Zhang Yi on the shoulder. He looked at him sincerely and said, "Zhang Yi, you have saved me more than once. No matter what decision you make, I will stand on your side. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled playfully. Can you represent the Deng family? Deng Shintong was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, Probably. Zhang Yi's mind was racing. You're so good, Deng Shintong. It seems that you still haven't given up the fight for power in Blizzard City. Perhaps he thought that Zhang Yi might fall out with Zhu Zheng, so he hurried over to win over Zhang Yi so that it would be easier for their Deng family to take power in the future. Others don't know the strength of Ypsilon, but can he? Basically, in today's Blizzard City, whoever can get Zhang Yi's support can become the largest force. I remember. Zhang Yi just responded lightly. Deng Shintong's bright eyes flashed with a strange light. He thought to himself, Zhang Yi is different now. We, the Deng family, must get closer to him and never make enemies. Chen Jingguan arranged for someone to send everyone to the subway station. Zhang Yi was too lazy to follow him. He just wanted to go home and have a good rest. After a major battle, what could be more intoxicating than returning home, enjoying a warm and comfortable house, drinking a cup of hot coffee made by Yang Xia, and lying on Zhou Keur's lap? When he was about to leave, Zhang Yi found a few familiar faces among the guards of Chaoyu Base. A man with a crew cut, a relatively complete beard, a firm expression, and dark skin. There were two men with the same bronze complexion as him. They were the fishermen he brought back from Yanlu Island, Lu Dehai, Ronglei, and Yugang. After the group of people were brought back, in order to prevent them from sticking together, Zhang Yi asked them to settle separately in 3 bases. Lu Dehai and the other 2 were settled here with Chen Jingguan. But I didn't expect that they would get mixed up so quickly and become members of the guard. But if you think about it carefully, it makes sense. Tianhai City has a sparse population. After several battles, there are less than 20,000 people left. It is one of the cities with the least population in the entire Jiangnan region. The major bases are also short of young and strong people. Lu Dehai and the other 2 are strong and brave, and they are indeed easy to stand out. Zhang Yi smiled slightly and waved over there. Come here. Lu Dehai and the other 2 had been looking at Zhang Yi eagerly. At this time, of course, they knew that Zhang Yi was the real king of Tianhai City, and even the boss of their Chaoyu base was just a little brother in front of Zhang Yi. When the 3 saw Zhang Yi calling them, they immediately ran over excitedly. Mr. Zhang. Lu Dehai nodded respectfully. He was still full of awe and gratitude to Zhang Yi. After all, it was Zhang Yi who brought them back from the desperate situation of Yanlu Island and saved their lives. Zhang Yi took out a pack of cigarettes from the different space. It was the 12 beauties of Jinling that he liked. He rarely smoked, but after the end of the world, he would occasionally smoke one. He distributed cigarettes to the 3 of them. After lighting one himself, Sua Yi threw the remaining half-pack to Lu Dehai. This action made Lu Dehai and the other 2's eyes sparkle. Cigarettes are an extremely scarce resource after the end of the world. After all, except for the regional headquarters that are still producing tobacco for the top leaders, this stuff is out of stock in the outside world, and the more you smoke, the less you have. How is Chaoyu Base recently? Are you used to it? Zhang Yi asked casually while smoking. Lu Dehai hurriedly replied, It's good. We live a much better life here than when we were on Yanlu Island. Zhang Yi nodded. Since you think it's good, then do it well. I don't like to care about the affairs of the 3 major bases on weekdays. You have to fight for what kind of life you want to live. After saying this, Zhang Yi left on his own without waiting for Lu Dehai to reply. Chatting with them is just... Chapter 1064 Surprise. Zhang Yi listened carefully, not missing a word. He had heard of Lu Dehai's mutation process for the first time, which was completely different from that of others. This might be a new way of mutation. Let me see your current ability, Zhang Yi said to Lu Dehai. Lu Dehai lifted his sleeves and then opened his palms. With a little force, his skin color instantly turned into a dark green color like seaweed, and a layer of fine scales grew on his claws, and even frog-like webbed feet appeared between his 5 fingers. Clang! A reverse bone blade suddenly popped out of his forearm, and it was cold and pressing. Zhang Yi murmured, Orc, ocean species. It really suits your ability. He looked at Lu Dahai and suddenly smiled. Does anyone else know about this? Lu Dahai swallowed his saliva. At that time, this matter attracted the attention of the people above, and Boss Chen also knew about it. Zhang Yi thought about it, pointed at him and said, "You three, follow me back." Lu Dahai was overjoyed. He could narrow the distance between him and Zhang Yi, and they would have a better chance to develop in Tianhai City in the future. "Yes, Mr. Zhang. But we have to report to Boss Chen first." Zhang Yi snorted and called a guard soldier over. "Tell Qin Jingguan later that I took the three of them away."
The
guard soldier nodded hurriedly. "Yes, Mr. Zhang." Zhang Yi opened the dimensional door in front of them, and then he walked in with Hua and Lele. The three brothers Lu Dahai looked at each other and hurriedly followed. After entering the dimensional door, the next moment they appeared thousands of meters away. Although this magical method was not the first time they had seen it, they were still amazed by it. Not long after, Zhang Yi took them to the long-lost shelter. Zhang Yi's return was naturally welcomed by everyone in the family. However, seeing the three guys who followed Zhang Yi with restrained hands and feet, with a restrained and flattering look on their faces, everyone was still a little curious. Zhou Kur pointed at them and asked, "Aren't they the fishermen on the island?"
Lu
Dahai and the other two hurried over to nod and greet them. Zhang Yi smiled and said, "You guys go to the next room to rest for a while. Sia, go and pour them some hot water and get them some fruit plates and cakes to eat." Yang Sia nodded with a smile and then extended her hand to invite them to sit in the next room. Lu Dahai and the other two nodded repeatedly and then walked into the small room used to entertain guests. After entering the room, the three of them sat down on the sofa. Through the huge French windows, you can also see the beautiful and cold world of ice and snow outside. The three of them were so hot that they quickly took off their winter coats. This is how people live. Lu Dahai couldn't help but sigh. The three of them were cautious and only dared to sit on half of their buttocks on the sofa, for fear that they would dirty the things in Zhang Yi's house. Rong Lei and Yu Gang couldn't help but say, "It would be great if we could also follow Mr. Zhang." Lu Dahai's eyes became serious. What kind of person is Mr. Zhang? He is like a god. It's not that easy to follow him. To them, Zhang Yi is now like a god. His strength is beyond their imagination. That's true. Rong Lei nodded. He also felt that being able to enter Zhang Yi's home was a great blessing. As for following Zhang Yi, he didn't even dare to think about it. Yu Gang said, "But Brother Lu, you are also an extraordinary person now. There may be a chance to work for Mr. Zhang." Lu Dahai took a deep breath, shook his head and said, "You know your own business. The gap between Mr. Zhang and me is too big." He rubbed his rough hands and said in a deep voice, "I just hope to use my ability to make Mr. Zhang look at me more. Any word he says can make us live better in Tianhai City." As soon as the voice fell, the sound of the door opening was heard outside. Yang Xia brought hot tea, fruit plates, and cakes over, and said to the three people with a smile, "Wait here for a while. Zhang Yi will come to see you later." The three people stared at the hot tea and food she put on the table. Their eyes were straight. Even if they wanted to be reserved, they couldn't move their eyes away. After all, for them, it was not easy to eat protein blocks or fish to their heart's content on weekdays. "Where are the cakes and fruits to eat?" Yang Xia smiled and said, "Don't be polite, just eat whatever you want. If it's not enough, I'll get more." She also knew what the three people were thinking. But these things are really nothing for the shelter. Not to mention that Zhang Yi's own space has stored a huge amount of food. Even after the end of the world, Zhang Yi did not forget to ask Fatty Su, Uncle Yu and others to search large supermarkets. Those supermarkets and shopping malls buried by heavy snow, the supplies can be it was very rich, and they took it all back. Today's shelters will not lack regular supplies at all. And fruits and other things are grown in the vegetable garden in their own backyard. Lu Dahai and the other two hesitated and thanked Yang Xia repeatedly. When Yang Xia walked out of the room and closed the door, the three of them could no longer control themselves and rushed over to stuff the food into their mouths. Here in the living room, Zhang Yi brought Hua and Lele back home, and everyone was very happy. But the women's eyes were all attracted by the anesthetized big chinchilla. There was no way. That guy was too cute, especially when he couldn't move. He looked like the oversized plush toys sold in the supermarket. Brother Zhang Yi, what is this? Is it a gift you brought back for us? Yang Xinxin hugged the big chinchilla, with little stars in her eyes. The big chinchilla was obviously not used to these overly enthusiastic women, and kept making threatening whining sounds from its mouth. Woo, woo. But it was weak at this time, and this sound was not threatening at all. The effect of compound number 3 will last for a week, and Zhang Yi injected it with an anesthetic. During this period, it basically has no ability to move. Zhang Yi took a sip of hot coffee and smiled. It is a creature I caught on Star Island. I brought it back for research. Zhang Yi looked at Zhou Kuer and said, Kuer, take a blood sample from it later to see what kind of creature it is. The big chinchilla can survive on Star Island full of poisonous miasma, and it also has a special reaction with the source elves, which makes Zhang Yi very curious about it. I always feel that there is something unusual about this creature. Zhou Kun nodded. Well, okay. Yang Xinxin reluctantly let go of her hand, then came to Zhang Yi and hugged his arm intimately. Brother, did you give them a big surprise this time on Star Island? Chapter 1065, a gift for everyone. Zhang Yi's promotion to Ypsilon was unknown to others, but his family knew about it. If it weren't for this, how could his family feel at ease that Zhang Yi would go to a place like Qingdao with only Huahua and Lele to take risks? Zhang Yi thought about everyone's reactions after he revealed the truth, and a playful smile appeared on his face. Of course, the expressions of all of them at that time were really interesting, Uncle Yu said with some concern. But in this way, it is equivalent to offending all the forces around the East China Sea. No one is willing to be fooled by others. From beginning to end, they have been fighting for something that does not exist at all, and in the end many people really lost their lives. Several major countries around the East China Sea suffered heavy losses. After all, this time they sent out all the top aliens in the country. It is absolutely impossible not to hate Zhang Yi. It doesn't matter, let them hate me. Zhang Yi put down the coffee cup in his hand and said with a smile, Anyway, when I was a good guy, few people would be grateful
to me for that.
In the end times, as long as you are strong enough, no matter how vicious you are, there will be people who will respect you and come to please you. Now that Zhang Yi has become an Ypsilon-level alien, who dares to come and provoke him? Fatty Sue slapped his thigh excitedly and said flatteringly, Boss is now an Ypsilon-level alien. Looking at the whole world, he is a first-class, powerful existence. Let's see who dares to come and provoke us in the future. Zhang Yi looked at Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue. You can't say that. My strength alone cannot solve all problems. How are you now? Zhang Yi went to Qingdao and obtained 2 copies of the Source of God. It is a very magical substance, a pure energy body. When you touch it, you will understand its function, life dimension evolution. He used 1 copy himself and left 1 copy for Huahua. And there are still some fragments of the Source of God left, which were left for other people in the family. Although he didn't know if it would work, he still wanted to see if this thing could help the aliens below the Delta level evolve. Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue looked at each other, and they smiled and said to Zhang Yi in unison, Zhang Yi, boss, we succeeded. Zhang Yi's eyes lit up immediately. He was right. Since the Source of God can help Delta-level aliens break through the bottleneck, it can naturally help lower-level aliens break through. And the dosage required is much smaller than the breakthrough of Huahua, Liangyu, and others. In other words, now you can feel the power of co-devouring, right? Zhang Yi confirmed. The 2 nodded, indicating that they have now been promoted to Delta-level aliens. Their abilities have undergone a qualitative change. But maybe it's because of limited talent. Compared with you, it's still far behind. Uncle Yu scratched his head honestly and said a little embarrassedly. In fact, when using the Source of God, he felt very sorry in his heart, thinking that he was a middle-aged uncle in his 40s, with poor talent, and was still wasting Zhang Yi's resources. Fatty Sue was shameless and had a smug look on his face. Anyway, we are now Delta-level aliens. It's also very impressive to talk about it. Hee, I won't embarrass you, boss. Zhang Yi leaned on the sofa and raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue to become so powerful in the future.
It's
Just that their strength has improved a little, and if the shelter encounters any trouble in the future, they can always play a greater role. Yang Xia and Zhou Haimei were in the kitchen. They had received the news of Zhang Yi's return early and had prepared the ingredients in advance. Now they started cooking and planned to cook a sumptuous meal. Listening to the chat of Zhang Yi and others, the two smiled at each other. Now one of them is a cooking alien and the other is purely a nanny at home, providing services for everyone. They will not go to the battlefield to fight, and they have no chance to participate in the battle. But now, the men are fighting outside, and they are in charge of the housework. This feeling makes them very enjoyable. Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen pestered Zhang Yi and asked him to tell the story that happened on Qingdao. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. That's a long story. We'll talk slowly while we eat. By the way, Karan, I prepared a gift for you. Lu Karan's eyes lit up. A gift for me? Zhang Yi stood up from the sofa and then came to the outside of the shelter. He opened the alien space, and two huge warships slowly poked their heads out of the alien space, and then stopped in the huge courtyard in front of the shelter. Everyone was stunned. Zhang Yi smiled and said to Lu Kuran, Chapter 1066 Methods to Improve Strength. Two of the world's most advanced warships were dropped in front of the shelter. Zhang Yi asked everyone to go back to the room. Zhou Kur, Yang Xinxin, and Liang Yu saw that everyone else had gifts. Although they didn't say anything, they were still a little unhappy in their hearts. Even Hua got the precious reward of the source of God. They must feel unbalanced. Zhang Yi certainly wouldn't favor one over the other. Now, everyone in the shelter is like his family. To maintain the harmony of a small family, there must be no unfairness. He said, this time I came back, I actually prepared gifts for everyone, and they are very valuable gifts. This sentence immediately made everyone curious. Even Yang Xia put down the kitchen knife in her hand and looked at Zhang Yi with expectation. Zhang Yi said, in addition to the source of God, there are also accompanying energy substances on the island. Although this substance cannot help people break the limitations of genes, it is the purest energy and can enhance people's strength. After he said that, he reached out and took out one transparent jar after another from the alien space. In the jar, one source elf after another was sealed. After landing on the island, Zhang Yi had the advantage of being a pioneer, so of course, he couldn't be unaware of the existence of the substance called Source Spirit. Therefore, when he hunted other aliens, he also collected a lot along the way. With the existence of the Hound Lele, it was not difficult for him to find these little gadgets. This kind of thing can make you stronger after absorbing it. I will distribute it according to everyone's ability. Zhang Yi briefly introduced the use of source spirits and then distributed these things to everyone. Even Lele got a portion. It excitedly held the source spirit in its mouth, jumping around in the room, and almost broke the ceiling. Liang Yu, Yang Xinxin, and Zhou Kur got the most. The others were second. As soon as the source spirit was in hand, everyone could sense the throbbing from the depths of their souls. That was the most fundamental energy of life. When they got the source spirit, it was like a hungry person getting food, and they had the most instinctive urge to absorb it. This thing must be very precious, right? Liang Yu swallowed her saliva. She got the most source spirits. Zhang Yi said calmly, it's okay. It just makes those captain-level aliens fight each other on the island. For aliens with an ability index of more than 9,000 points, the effect will become worse and worse. For Hua and me, they're almost useless. But for you, it should be quite effective, Zhang Yi said casually, but everyone could understand how precious these source elves are after listening. Zhang Yi, thank you. Liang Yu thanked Zhang Yi sincerely. Zhang Yi spread his hands and said, not only should you say thank you, but you should also do thank you things. You all have to become stronger, so that no matter what kind of changes we encounter in the future, we will have enough strength to deal with it. Zhang Yi still has great expectations for the people at home. Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue are now Delta-level aliens. Regardless of whether they can fight or not, at least they can play a role in any situation in the future. As for Liang Yu, Zhang Yi has high expectations for her. Such a martial arts master with powerful power is definitely Zhang Yi's right-hand man. If Zhang Yi had not been worried that she would be too strong and surpass himself, he would have given her the source of God. Yang Xinxin's ability is based on rules, which is extremely abnormal, and there is a lot of room for improvement. The key is that she is very smart and is an important military advisor to Zhang Yi. Zhou Kuda's medical ability is also very important. Doctors are a profession that people often don't want to touch on weekdays, but they can save lives at critical moments. Of course, you have to work hard to improve. Yang Xia received less rewards, but only relative to others. She is Zhang Yi's quartermaster, which is very important, but her importance level is slightly lower. As for Aunt Zhou Haimei, she is not an alien, and she doesn't lack anything on weekdays. In addition to having enough daily necessities, Uncle Yu also arranged everything for her on the spiritual level, so Zhang Yi doesn't need to worry about it. So Zhang Yi came to Uncle Yu and said to him, "It's not easy for Aunt Zhou to take care of everyone on weekdays, but she is not an extraordinary person, so I don't have anything extra to give her. Don't reward her openly, but reward her secretly." Uncle Yu immediately understood, and his old face actually showed an embarrassed smile. He nodded vigorously. Okay, I understand. Zhou Haimei, who was not far away, couldn't help blushing when she heard this. After Uncle Yu absorbed the fragments of the Source of God, his originally strong physique has become even stronger. Looking at the happy expressions of everyone in the family, Zhang Yi's heart also surged with warmth. People outside are unreliable, Zhu. This video ends here. We'll bring more soon. Thanks, please subscribe to my channel if not already to get more videos.